Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Past Master by R.A. Lafferty. Our friend Paul has just returned, or is about to return, to his home planet of Astrobe with Thomas, which is to say Sir Thomas More, which is to say St. Thomas More. Chapter 3, At the Naked Sailor. "Why, this is beyond wonder, Paul," Tom said when they had toppled into normal space and began to orbit into Astrobe. "It's a golden world. When I was a boy, I was told that the streets of Paris were gold, or if not they, then those of Rome or Constantinople or Cordova. I visited them all and they weren't. The Spanish ambassador told me that it was so in Mexico City. I didn't go there, but I had long since come to my doubting years. But this whole world here is golden." "It is the color of our green sun," Paul said. "It is our white, and so it will seem to you." They came onto firm Astrobe, dismounted, and gave the craft to the keepers. They started towards the easy rooms. "Not that way, Red. It's a trap. It's a trap," an Ansel voice erupted in Paul's head. To your left quickly, and find friends by the edging trees." "Not that way, Thomas," said Paul, and they veered off their course. "We walk in this direction. Careful now. It was the voice of Rimrock the Ansel in my head warning us. You wouldn't know about Ansels." "Why, certainly I know Paul. He spoke in my own head several times during the late hours of the passage. I look forward to meeting him. But I heard no warning. Are you sure of this?" "No, but we'll not go to the easy rooms till we are sure. We'll find what's going on over by the edging trees. Come quickly, but carefully." "Paul, I don't like it," Thomas said, hanging back a little. "Don't hand me around like a boy. I know more of snares and traps than you do. The king's men do sometimes employ the left-handed trap, and I smell the iron of it now." Too late. "Paul, Thomas, away fast," came the oceanic voice of Rimrock in their heads. "It was not myself who spoke to you, it was another. Away." Too late. Paul and Thomas were chopped down like weeds. It was agonizingly painful darkness, blind, nauseating confusion, a devouring death that encompassed Paul in mind and body. It stank, it roared, it blasted, it disgusted and affrighted. A growing rumor was rising in the near distance, but too far, too late surely, to save them. Paul remarked, with his riven mind and suddenly shattered and darkened vision, and with dirt in his mouth, how beautiful was the afterglow of the day, especially when one had just died. The double vision of the reeling, the syndrome of the split head, lends itself to detachment. Paul heard, with ears that seemed to belong to someone else, a new booming roar very near. He was amused that Thomas More, dead 1,000 years, was so angrily refusing to die. There was another fellow, a long, crooked sorrel top, who was making a great fuss about it also. Paul pulled the two halves of his mind back together and realized the other fellow was himself, and that refreshing and kindling anger had flowed back into him. It had been a new blow, one that should have crushed his skull, rather than torch the reaction in him, canny coolness linked with white-hot anger. "If that didn't kill me, I'll be a devilish hard man to kill." He spat through the dirt in his mouth and had already fought his way to his feet. He had hope now. He recognized the growing rumor in the ever nearer distance as the shouting of the poor lungers from Cathead, and he knew that those miserables were on his side. The lungers hated everybody, but they hated the stilt-gated assassins most of all. And Thomas had not stayed down when struck down. He had been up again and giving battle. There had been words in his booming roar, but they came to Paul's understanding only now. Front them, Thomas shouted. "They're king's men, they kill from behind. They go for the dorsals, the spinal, the base stem. Ones who flees them are already dead. Front them, front them." It was not now the original assassins only. It was a churning mob, and men and things were killing and being killed. Paul was struck another blow that drove bone splinters into his brain, but oblivion never quite closed down on him. Oblivion was like a mirage that receded so that he could not come up to it, and the confusion had multiplied mightily. Distant sounds had the mocking quality that set conflict off as a sort of dream world. The hoot of distant slag boats calling had a terrible profundity coming over the pungent water. One of the assassins was broken and useless. A giant lunger was killed. A boy named Adam was killed. But hadn't the boy Adam been killed before? No, Adam hadn't necessarily been killed that other time. Not this time either. The boy had been killed in one of those dreams of passage, and those dreams, being out of time, could be of either past or future things. When it came to Paul that he was being saved, it came to him with a childish delight, as though it was his right. He heard Thomas and Rimrock the Ansel talking, but not in words. It were better to hide in a den like a wounded bear and study the events and their foundations, the Ansel told Thomas, and the Ansel was a native of Astrobe and had never seen a bear. It were better to get to any low hidden place with remarkable suddenness and wait for the worst day that is sure to come, Thomas told the creature. And Thomas had a broken jaw and wouldn't be able to speak till it was wired up. "We're only poor miserable lungers from Cathead," cried the powerful breaking voice of Battersea to what sounded like a crowd gathering. "It is only a little scuffle among ourselves, and we carry away our own dead. Decent people need not be concerned with it. We go quickly and regret having intruded onto an open area." Paul was being carried somewhere. It was easier that way. Oblivion flickered around the edges of Paul and then closed in completely on him. A few hours for the beginning of recovery, and Paul awoke in a great odor, a writhing of many strong odors of men and seas and things. It smells like the barrio, Paul told himself, and smelling seemed to be the only one of his senses that was functioning well. Worse, it smells like Cathead. Still worse, it smells like the strip where they merge. It smells like one of the 10,000 low bordello inns in the teeming region. It smells like the worst of them all, the naked sailor. Paul found that he could see, though crookedly, out of an unmended head. He had been lying on hay, and he had the impression that goats had been kept in it in that room. He found that he could walk, though not straight as a rational man would. He staggered out of the doorless room. He walked in an angular and indirect manner through the viscera of a rambling and noisome building, past a kitchen where a mad-eyed girl gave him a length of strong fish twined in kelp, and he continued on his way, eating it. He lurched along till he found a common room, and then another on a lower level. He heard the voice of Thomas More. He saw that it was coming through wired jaws. "It's a bleak backbyre we have here," Thomas said. "We'll clean it up, or we'll pull it down and burn it. What we need is a tub in the middle of the room and dip the whole clutch of you." Thomas was holding a sort of court there. He was a lively little runt with a clear voice and a pleasant, unhandsome face. He was attended by a dozen weary, ragged men who sat about on the floor and regarded him with red-rimmed eyes. "Where in hell are we, Thomas?" Paul asked in a voice that hurt him to use. He had floating bones in his head somewhere. "Fourth of the seven sections, Paul," Thomas said cheerfully. "According to the Muslims, the fourth section of hell is for Christians. Be appeased, there are three worse hells than this. It's named the Naked Sailor." "The Naked Sailor. Thomas, there aren't three worse hells than this," Paul stated. "Aye, man, there are," said one of the men with red-rimmed eyes. "It's a compendium, Paul," said Thomas, as if he were lecturing a congregation of barons. "It gives me a vantage point to study what is wrong with your Astrobe before I make my appearance from beyond the grave. The Naked Sailor is itself a grave. I have ventured out 3 times this day and have had 3 men killed defending you." "You venture out again, man, and we'll kill you ourselves to save us the trouble," said another of the shot-eyed men sitting on the floor. "Ourselves, we have only a life each. You're not worth another one, old potato face." "There's something deformed about this whole business," Thomas said. "These giant settlements here are pieces right out of hell. Do you know, Paul, that there are unburied dead lying in some of the alleys? This must be the underside of this world's sick delirium. Well, I'm finding what is wrong. I'll see the top soon enough and find how right everything is there." "Be on your guard when you do, man," said another of the weary-eyed fellows. "It is in these places here that the savor of the only things that are still right on Astrobe clings." The killers were milling around outside, and the air was full of sullen electricity. There was fear and anger like soot in the air. Botflies were spluttering and roaring about the slippery blood in the roadway outside and in the common room itself. There had been carnage, and the atmosphere spoke of more to come. Just what is my status? Thomas asked. Why should they try so persistently to kill you and me, Paul? What are these curious killers? They are the guardians of the Astrobe dream, Paul said with sad irony. They believe you'll see our side of the thing, one of the ragged men said. We're not so sure that you will. Are these killers human beings? Thomas asked. They are not, said the weariest of the men sitting there. They are devils dressed in tin cans. Was the Ansel who talked to you without words a human being, Thomas? Paul asked. Would you call Rimrock a human? But you haven't seen him yet. I don't need to see him, Paul. He is composed of body and spirit. He has intellect. That makes him human. But the killers look much more human than he does. They have a calculated shrewdness that passes for intellect, and they have a human form. There was a clatter, a crash, a moan that was only half human, and a bleating scream that was dying animal. A poor man scampered in with three goats, a crazy man with unfocused eyes. He sat down on the floor, sobbing and coughing together, and his goats gathered around him. Is he human, Thomas? Paul asked. Certainly, though he's demented. He is a judgment upon everyone on this planet. Aren't there madhouses for such as he? In civilized Astrobe, they say that all Cathead and Barrio is a madhouse. There are 2 million men as mad as he, 1 in 12. He isn't bad. He slavers and he cannot speak coherently, but he gets about. He has even avoided the killers till now. But I doubt he'll be able to avoid them much longer the way they are ravening about today. We may none of us avoid them. You don't like what you've seen of Cathead. You don't like what you've seen of Cathead, what you now see and hear and smell? Paul asked. No, I had no idea that such ancient vestiges of poverty and misery could still survive on the advanced world of Astrobe. Why weren't such things swept away long ago? The mad goat man was crooning a little song. The killers were thronging and gnashing in the roads like the iron dogs they were. It isn't an ancient vestige, Paul said. This is all new. 20 years ago, Astrobe was completely beautiful and civilized. Then these places appeared like a blight, as the great ones say. I do not call them that. Paul, I walked for many squares through these neighborhoods in my 3 sorties out. There are blind children with their eye sockets matted with insects. There are people starving to death, falling and being unable to arise. There are men driving themselves at labor in small fetid shops. There was never whip slavery so harsh. There are men and women working in atmospheres so foul that they turn purple in a few moments. They come out spouting blood and go back to labor before they have rested. There are human people eating the filth in the gutters and drinking the gutter runs. There are like this in their millions. I saw a large building fall down. There are women offering children for sale. There are old clothes men who strip the corpses and leave them naked in the streets. Is there no compassion in the civilized sections of Astrobe? Can they do nothing to alleviate the misery here? But Thomas, everybody in Cathead and the Barrio is here by choice. They left civilized Astrobe of their free will to set up these giant shambles. They can return to civilized Astrobe today, within the hour, and be cared for and endowed with property and settled in ease. And they would be free of the mechanical murderers also. God over my head, why don't they do it then? Somebody go with him, Paul shouted, for the demented goat man had started out into the roadway once more just when a din of killers had arisen. Several of the weary men had risen to it and then fallen back. Too late. He had gone out in his distraction, and his small goats had followed him out. Perhaps he was more addled than usual. Perhaps he was not used to such concentrations of killers as were smelling around the presence of Thomas. The whipped crazy man knew how to dodge through 1 or 2 killers, scooting like a low whippet. There were too many to dodge. The striding killers struck him down dead just outside the door. Passers-by withdrew to their own safety, and the little goats bleated in lonesomeness. Then, as the killers clashed along looking for new entrants, quick, hungry people caught the little animals, fought over them, tore them apart, and began to eat hunks of them raw and bleeding. Enough, Thomas moaned. I was never an advocate of wealth and fineness. I believe fully in holy poverty, but I say that poverty is like drink. A little of it is stimulating and creative. Too much of it is depraved and horrifying. I must be about my work on this world, and I must get to the center of things before I can solve the mystery of degradation here. How can I get in touch with the men who sent for me? I've seen enough of the underside of this world for this day. A communications center is approaching on 2 feet or on four, Paul said. He can put anybody into contact with anybody. Aye, I feel him. He's talked to me, and I had but a short glimpse of him at our ambushing. It is Rimrock, the oceanic man. He at least will talk sense. And Rimrock, the oceanic man, came in on no legs at all, then on 4 legs, then on 2. And he shook hands with Thomas with great friendship. An ansel is in appearance a little like a seal of old earth. It can slither with great speed along the land, just as though it were swimming in water. It can walk passably as a man or as an animal, and it has curious mental powers. My friend from the green ocean, Thomas boomed, you of the rubbery black hide and the tufted ears, you bound or you walk and you talk inside men's minds and make appearances. Read me the meaning of this damnable world, Rimrock. They sent for you and you come. I and others thought you should see a little of the sanity of Cathead and the Barrio before you are plunged into the madness of civilized Astrobe. But the great men are waiting for you impatiently, a day and a night and half a day now. They are frenzied that someone has stolen their prize and may somehow turn it against them. And I had to settle with another, a false Ansel, who spoke in the Paul's mind and tried to lure you to your death. It's fresh blood on me. I hope you don't mind. Rimrock the Ansel was much larger than any earth seal, and the slicing mouth on him was a meter long. It comes down on this place, all the weary men with the red-rimmed eyes shouted, and they stormed up from their sitting on the floor. We go, we go! They all rushed off, some to the interior rooms of the building, some as a battling wedged with flailing staves and pokers through the killers in the roadway. What ails the fellows? Thomas demanded. What comes down on this place? The bleak blackness, Rimrock said. We have a visitation. He is curious about your being here. I know you have met him before in bits and snatches on your own world. I am sure that you encountered fragments of him in the passage here. Now it is himself. The girl woman Evita came in. She was like a wraith of a sudden beauty and mystery, and a depth of depravity that took the breath away. The short glimpse of her set Thomas to shaking. She was something not completely of nature. I wanted to see him and talk to him, the Evita said, but the old monster comes instead. I will talk to the Thomas in another place and hour. She vanished out again. Paul and Thomas and Rimrock the Ansel were left alone. Then the monster Udin came and sat in the middle of them and encircled them. The short account that follows is necessarily mystic. We cannot be sure that Paul and Thomas held the same congress with Udin. We cannot hear at all the exchange between Udin and Rimrock, but we can sense it. We cannot be sure whether it was Paul or Thomas forming the words in the man Udin conversation. It was a confrontation and a presence. But the Paul Thomas host knew who Udin was. They shriveled together in his presence, and their bones grew hollow. You are like ghosts, said the Paul Thomas. Are you here only because we see you here? Which was first, you or the belief in you? I always was, and the belief in me comes and goes, Udin said. Ask the Ansel. Was I not of the ocean from the beginning? What have you done to Rimrock? The Paul Thomas asked. He diminishes. Yes, he turns back into an animal in my presence, said Udin. So will you and all your kind. You will turn further back and further. I will annihilate you. I deny you completely, said the Paul Thomas. You are nothing at all. Yes, I am that. But all who encounter me make the mistake of misunderstanding my nothingness. It is a vortex. There is no quiet or static aspect to it. Consider me topologically. Do I not envelop all the universes? Consider them as turned inside out. Now everything is on the inside of my nothingness. Many consider the nothing a mere negative, and they consider it so to their death and obliteration. We laugh you off the scene, said Paul Thomas. You lose. No, I am winning easily on Astrobe, Udin said. I have my own creatures going for me. Your own mind and its imagery weakens. It is myself putting out the flame. Every dull thing you do, every cliche you utter, you come closer to me. Every lie you tell, I win. But it is in the tired lies you tell that I win most toweringly. Old nothingness who sucked out the flames, I have known flames to be lighted again, said the Paul Thomas. It will not kindle, said the Uden. I eat you up. I devour your substance. There was only one kindling. I was overwhelmed only once. But I gain on it. I have put it out almost everywhere. It will be put out forever here. I piloted once to a world of deformed little animals of a certain stench, said the Paul Thomas. They ran in and out of old buildings that had been built by a cogent race. The experts to whom I brought some of the deformed little animals said that they were the fallen remnant of that cogent race. They were abominable little creatures whose only interest was to defile, and the experts said they had fallen from something very like man. I know the folk you mean, said Uden. They are a particular triumph of mine. Leave me now, the Paul Thomas ordered sharply. You are a nothingness, a ghost. One may order a ghost to leave. Never will I leave. Not ever in your life will you sit down that I do not sit down with you. And finally, it will happen that only one of us is left to get up, and that will be myself. I suck you dry. I have one juice left you do not know, said the Paul Thomas. You have less of it than you believe. The Uden monster had disappeared from them. Paul and Thomas More and Rimrock the Ansel dozed. It had been a mere passage dream, one that was somehow left over. Look at them sleep, Giant Battersea cried in derision. On your feet, the three of you. We mount battle array to convey you back, and Rimrock must gather his wits to set up the communication. Whether your work on Astrobe be good or bad, you have to get on with it, said Shanty. One doesn't save a world by napping away the noontime. Come, we'll take you through the killers and to the important men who wait for you. Then let you shrivel. Let you turn into things like them. It was really a battle array that Battersea and Shanty and Copperhead and the others led. There was weaponry and vehicles, and the killers backed away from them frustrated. Paul and Thomas and the Ansel rode out of Vile Cathead and the Barrio, away from the Naked Sailor and 10,000 places like it, skirted giant Woo Town, and came into colossal Cosmopolis, the capital of Astrobe. Misery forgot, here was opulence and ease, beauty and dignity of building and persons, the real golden world, the ideal achievement. It was the most beautiful and most highly civilized world ever built, the most peaceful, the most free from any sort of want. It dazzled. And in the heart of Cosmopolis, the three big men, along with the fourth member of the big three, all now in communication with the Ansel and knowing of their coming, awaited their prize from the past that had escaped to them for the 2 days since the landing. And we will attend that meeting next time.